engaged? That's a really important question. And do you have the right customers to grow your business? I mean, those are all three critical questions that as business leaders, as business owners, as executives, that we need to address each and every day. And I will give this presentation to Tia so that I think, if they're willing to send it out afterward, absolutely, we can do that. One of the things that we've done, and we've given this presentation before, but we've asked clients and we've asked friends of Marketing Works, what % of your focus is on current client-customer relationships versus obtaining new clients and customers? And you can see that, there's a pretty big percentage of people that more than 50% of their effort is on client retention, and then it certainly goes up further, which is a really positive thing. As we know, as you just look at the general stats, it is far easier to keep and grow existing clients than it is to get new clients. And on average, increasing customer retention rates by 5% increases profits by 25 to 125% based on studies by Harvard Business School. I'm also just going to read a couple other stats on why this is important, and one of them is really just kind of a little bit of a story. But imagine two businesses, one that retains 90% of its customers, the other retaining 80% of its customers. If both add customers, and by the way, I'm reading this because when it comes to math, it's not a good thing. That's why I'm in marketing. So if I don't read this, it will be an issue. But if both these companies add new customers at the rate of 20% per year, the first will have a 10% net growth in customers per year, while the other will have none. Over 7 years, the first firm will virtually double, while the second firm will have no real growth. So everything else being equal, that 10% advantage in customer retention results in doubling of customers every 7 years without doing anything else. I mean, that's pretty impressive in and upon itself. So that's why customer retention is so important, and that's why it's certainly worth putting a lot of focus and effort into retaining those customers. So one of the things that we always try to do, how do we create it in bite-sized chunks so that you guys can take some of this and think about it and leverage it back at your businesses. But so we've come up with what we believe to be the 5 kind of key golden rules to building client relationships that last. The first one is defining your ideal client. So show of hands, how many of you have gone through the process of defining what the ideal client for your business looks like? So a little, under half, but that is really, really important. And we'll go into, and I'm even going to give you a handout in a second on how to do that. But, so as we've asked some of our clients, over 90% say they're able to define their ideal client and customer. So if you haven't defined that, it's certainly worth taking the time to do. Some of the factors that you need to consider on how you do that is, what do they value? How do they make decisions? What is the annual and lifetime contribution to your business? What industries, do you specialize in? Is there a geographical reach that's important? For instance, for Marketing Works, from an industry standpoint, workers' comp is one industry that we focus in, and that's a national geographic reach. We also focus in technology clients. With technology clients, it's typically within Central Ohio. So we know even, within those ideal clients, where they may be within the country. What are the roles within the organization? Again, at Marketing Works, we're typically talking either to the owner or president or CEO of the business or to someone in marketing. And what is the size? So would anybody be willing, and otherwise I may start calling on people, would anybody be willing to talk a little bit about what, certain industries that you focus on, or?
I tend to work with companies between 10 and 50 million.
Okay.
I prefer smaller because when you start getting over 75 million especially, there's enough slush money around that the politics can get a bit hairy, and I like to get things done. I don't really care to play footsie with people. I don't like the games that go with large organizations.
Sure. Well, and so everything that was just shared, thank you very much. That's a way to, again, look at who those ideal clients are and who do you want to not only target, but again, retain. There may be some clients in your portfolio that don't fit this ideal client situation. And so, it's going to be something that as one, you're attracting new prospects and looking at new prospects, making sure that you've identified this, but even with those clients that you're looking to retain, making sure they fit this filter too. So I'm going to pass these around. I know I have too many copies, but here's just a handout on some of the types of questions that we always look to answer when it comes to defining an ideal client. And again, take that back with you, look at it, fill it out, and we can certainly, and I will certainly hand out business cards at the end, and happy to go through, some of those handouts too offline if you guys would like. So any questions about the ideal client? Yes, sir.
Yeah, my question is more the opposite of that, like when you're getting too many bad clients.
Okay.
Can this help you?
Absolutely.
Those guys out?
Absolutely. So that's, as we're approaching new business at Marketing Works, and as we're looking at it for our clients, and thinking about prospecting, we are actively going after clients that fit that ideal look. I will say, as an example, we focus in B2B, serving B2B clients. When it comes to business to consumer clients, it's not an area of focus. We just had an opportunity with a restaurant chain that's an awesome restaurant chain, but it's not a good fit for us. So while we hate to turn down that type of work or those opportunities, those were the kind of the tough decisions that we need to make. We also know that size, as was mentioned previously, some clients may be too small. A startup for us is probably not the ideal fit. So you can do the inverse of this, spell out what is a bad client for you, and then take the opposite approach and think about, again, what that looks like from the positive standpoint. Is that helpful?
Yes, very.
Okay, sure. Any other questions or thoughts on ideal client before we move on to rule number 2? Okay, well, rule number 2 is, and it's really basic, it's understanding the client's definition of success. So, it's really all about how do you manage their expectations? What are their expectations? What are their goals, objectives? What is it that they want to accomplish? And as we've been talking to, folks out in the world and our clients, you can see the majority of them don't know how to define what customer success looks like to their clients, or what success looks like, to their customers. And so one of the really easy things to ask from the very beginning is just that question. How do you define success? And so it's something we try to do each and every time we take on a new client, and for our customers as well. How do they define success? Before I move on, I just want to ask a general question. How do you, when you're thinking about customers or thinking about yourself, how do you guys define success when you're looking at, either being a customer or adding customers to your portfolio? Anyone want to throw out an idea? Rich?
Well, if I'm a customer, one of the things I want is
understanding the goal. What is the business goal that customer wants to, accomplish, or that consumer wants to accomplish? As Rich said, if you're walking into a store, you want to be satisfied with the product or service that you buy. What are the 3 objectives? And making sure that they're quantifiable. So how much, if we're working with a client, how much do you want to grow? What are your specific objectives? We have one client that it's more about recruitment and retention of employees. What do they want their employee retention to be? How many more employees are they looking to hire, and how can we help with that communication? And then the strategy, that's where really the rubber hits the road. How do we define the right strategy and the objectives to be able to do that? And some of the, the key points that, just from a marketing work standpoint, but, as we're working with clients, we talk about things like a marketing originated customer. Well, that's a customer that was, saw some of the outreach that one of our clients was doing, whether it was through media relations, whether it was through email, and that they contacted that company and wanted more information. A marketing influenced customer, and that again could be through social media and through comments or a review or something like that. And, then following back up with that individual and building that relationship. The total rate of growth, reputation or share of voice, maybe compared to competition, sales-ready leads. And how many of you are familiar with the Net Promoter Score? One person. Who I happen to bring to the room. So the Net Promoter Score is a really interesting thing, and I just recommend all of you, when you guys leave, search, just do a quick Google search. It is one question. And it's one question that if you ask your customers, you'll get a great sense of, are they a promoter or not? Are they going to actively promote your business, to somebody else? And the one question is, would you refer, and I'll just put marketing works, to a colleague or friend? If, and it's on a scale of 1 to 10, if they answer 9 or 10, they're a promoter. If they answer 7 or 8, they're somewhat neutral. And if they answer 6 and below, they're a detractor. So to get your Net Promoter Score, you take the percentage of those that answered 9 or 10, and you subtract it from those that answered 6 and below, and that's your Net Promoter Score. And every industry has benchmarks and averages, and you can see that in doing that search. But what's really interesting is you'll see airlines have really low Net Promoter Scores overall. Banks typically have pretty low Net Promoter Scores, but it's a way to benchmark yourself against the competition. And then there's places like IKEA and Apple and folks like that have really high Net Promoter Scores because the engagement's so high. Are there, and just thinking about, and the question for all of you to answer for your business, how do your customers define success? And Rich gave some examples. Are there any other examples that, any of you would like to share, or any questions that you would have on measuring success?
In my case, a willingness to continue the relationship.
That's great.
It's not just transactional, there's the process.
Awesome. John?
I think when I'm talking with a customer about potentially doing business with them, it's surprising how many people haven't put a whole lot of thought into what a success is, or even what their client value is. So when they talk about they want to get more business, well, what does that really mean? What does that add to the bottom line?
Yeah.
It's an abstract term rather than a quantifiable term, like you mentioned.
And something that John brought up, and I just want to emphasize it, I talked about it a little bit, but defining what is the value of a customer. What is a customer worth to your business? And that also allows you to make good investment decisions on, and I'll just give an example with search engine optimization or search engine marketing. If you know the value of a customer, and let's say you're a dentist and the annual value of a customer is $500, but the lifetime value of that customer, again in industry terms, is $30,000. Well, if I'm willing to spend $200 to recruit that client through search engine marketing or search engine optimization, then I know how many customers I need to break even when I'm making an investment, and so kind of reverse engineering that as best you can is really, really powerful, so that you know what that looks like. Any other questions before I move on to rule number 3? And rule number 3 is one that I have a lot of fun with, because when my wife saw this slide, she's like, that doesn't look anything like my engagement ring, and she's absolutely correct. But rule number 3, it's setting the rules of engagement. So it's defining how you're talking to those customers throughout the entire life cycle. And you'll hear something, and it's a buzz term, but you'll hear more about it, I'm sure, in coming years. The customer journey. From the time they're a prospect all the way through they're a customer and retaining them, it's making sure that you understand what resonates with them, the messaging that resonates with each of those, as well as what are the types of materials that those people are looking for every stage that they're going through. And I know this is really, really hard to read, but this is an example of the customer journey for Cardinal Health and one of their key rewards programs. And so you can see Cardinal took a lot of time to think about, from the time they're a target and a prospect all the way through to customer retention. It was really important for them to understand what are the customer frustrations and challenges through that, define how they were going to handle them, how they were going to act, what were the things that they were going to be doing in every step. And the steps go from nurture, cultivate, convert, implement, onboard, activate, and retain. So as they're trying to maintain those customer relationships, what are the types of messaging? And then we even have desired customer actions, the tools that their sales team provides, different marketing resources, and then who is responsible. And all of that changes every step of the way. So it's really important. A lot of our businesses are not certainly going to be as complicated as this. But again, really think about, it is far different to be talking to somebody as you're nurturing them, and you're going to be talking to different people within the organization than to retain them. And so, at Cardinal, when they're first talking, to somebody as a prospect, they're typically talking to, one of the medical officers or, somebody that may be the CFO of a large health system. By the time they get to retention, they're talking to procurement. They're talking to an entirely different audience within that organization. So it's really important to, map that out every step of the way. And so some of the ways that we talk about, engaging customers. Yeah, please.
In that previous slide.
Yep.
That's rather sophisticated. So do
Yes.
they lay out scenario scripts to go with the various scenarios with the various stakeholders with whom they have to talk?
They especially on the sales side. So on the targeting side, they have a sales playbook, absolutely. And again, and that is complicated. For us, and that's where, again, we can certainly simplify it, but as I said, if you can start mapping it out, what are those prospects, what are their needs? And in your case, it may be general needs about your approach to change management and those pieces. And then you get to the client retention side, it's going to be, well, what am I doing to, and I'm going to go over some examples, but to build that relationship? What am I doing to cultivate that relationship and some of those types of things? But when it comes to being what they call a member or a customer, they really don't have that playbook as well defined. So that's something that they're really working on to make sure that they're building those client relationships and establishing them.
And they coordinate all these conversations with all these stakeholders?
Yeah, well, and again, because they have to. Well, and I'll just, one example, and this will be somewhat of a made-up example because this isn't real to Cardinal Health, but we had one client that had a rewards program, and as they were talking to one customer of theirs, they ended up having more than 100 people contacting one customer contact because they had finance, they had sales, they had marketing, they had legal, and they had multiple brand owners across this organization. So 100 people contacting one person in procurement, and finally they raised their hand and said, "No mas, please stop. Please coordinate how you're doing that." So, that's just the type of example of, you really do, especially at a company this size, but even within your teams, and I'll just give an example of Marketing Works. I happen to be blessed and be the president of an amazing company with an amazing team. I'm usually the one on the front line selling. So then I hand it off to, our account team. And we have a welcome, program and everything set up so we know how I hand that off. But really then it's up to the account team to nurture that relationship. But then once or twice or multiple times a year, I'm in contact with that client to make sure things are going well. And we're doing other things to, build that relationship. So it's really what's doing what works best, for your organization. Is that helpful? So some of the ways, and I talked a little bit about these, some of the ways to engage, when you bring a new customer on, do you ask that customer thoughts about what they like, what they dislike? Even things, it can be as, when is your birthday? What kids, what are the ages of your kids? What are they interested in? But really asking, and what are things that they really liked about any past partners that they worked with, or maybe that they didn't like. So putting something like that together. As I mentioned, senior leader outreach, just making sure that the senior leader within your organization is always touching those customers, on kind of a routine basis. The retention schedule and plan. So are you guys thinking about, and again I mentioned birthdays, but are you thinking about birthdays? Are you doing things like sending, Christmas cards? Do you have a client appreciation event? What does that look like? Are you sending them something on their anniversary, of starting to work with you? Are you sending them, something? And again, I know some clients can't accept gifts, but just even sending them a note, thanking them for being such a great client. And then just, are you updating them? Are there things that you're changing about your business? Are there things that, even just fun things? We one year sent sleds to all of our clients. And again, they weren't super expensive, sleds, but, plastic toboggans to all of our clients. And we talked about, starting the new year by rolling downhill, or I apologize that I'm not a copywriter, so I'm sure it was far better than that. But just doing fun things to keep them updated on what you're doing, and even newsletters. Just again keeping them engaged. As I mentioned, appreciation events. Are you inviting clients out to dinner? Are you, one, you can bring them all together, but even just those small things like, I will say a funny story. We had a client that their son was the quarterback of a local football team, and our entire team went out and watched the football game. And that client, was crying at the end of the game. That actually brings tears to my eyes. I mean, she was so happy, and she bought us flowers. The next Monday morning, this huge bouquet of flowers comes in, and she was just tickled that we were willing to make that extra effort. Are you asking clients for referrals and reviews and ratings? There's a lot of things, especially on the consumer side, Yelp and Facebook, just as Tia mentioned. Are you, would you be willing to give them a review or a rating online? Doing that for your business. I happen to partner with John at the end of the room, and one of the things that, we do with a lot of businesses, do you have someone that's gone onto your site and provided a review or rating? Google, are they providing Google reviews of your business? And if not, that's something that they should be doing and you should be asking for. And then, just as we saw with Cardinal, are there loyalty programs? For some businesses that makes a lot of sense, and for others maybe not. But so, just thinking about 5 ways you engage your customers, or even just starting to create a list would be kind of some homework that I would provide all of you. And I have one more handout that I will give you guys before we get to this next point. But this is what we call our client health dashboard worksheet. But before I move on to that, are there any other questions about ways to engage your current customers? Okay, well, with that, I'm going to move on to our rule number 4, measure and monitor. So what I just handed out to all of you is just it's just an example, but it's something that you guys may want to look at and use. So every month we monitor the health of our clients, and we rate them, kind of using a traffic light: green, yellow, red. Green is everything's going great, and and yellow is there's some warnings and something we may want to think about of raising maybe an alert to me that I need to reach out to the client. There may be something wrong. And red, there's an issue that we need to address and handle as a company. So it's an easy tool, but something just to start listing, and again, if you have hundreds of customers, it will be harder to do, but there are certainly surveys and tools that you guys can use to automate, that understanding. But if you have 10 customers or 20, it's just a great tool to go through and really assess, how happy your customers are. So one of the questions, we've asked, just friends and clients, how engaged are your existing clients' customers? This is when you have half are engaged and some are engaged, and people that don't know, that's really concerning. Really, more than only about, over 70 some percent said that, or excuse me, less than 70% said that they really believe that their customers are highly engaged. So when it comes down to it, and that dashboard, but doing things that really understand how engaged your customers are. That Net Promoter Score that I talked about earlier is a great tool to use. I mean, it's, again, one question. It's really simple to ask. Yes, sir.
I've got engagement's turning into a popular buzzword.
Yep.
When you say engagement, what do you mean?
So engagement in this case to us is that they are actively, responding to emails, that as you're requesting meetings, that, they're responding to meetings, that, that they are involved in the business, and you're, reaching out, and, they haven't gone silent on you. If a customer goes silent, that's a huge issue. Chances are that customer, may already be looking for another business partner. So what we say is, if a client's engaged and you're speaking to them on a frequent basis and you know that they're happy, that's great. If you don't know that, that's when, problems really arise.
Thank you.
Sure. Well, and another way, so again, and if you're a consumer, company, if they continue to buy from you, if you're a Starbucks, customer, and I see the same person coming in day after day after day, that's engaged. If they came in once, someone spilled coffee on them, and they never came back, well, that would be one that, would be an issue. Some of the things, and I just talked about it, but, measuring customer health, how do you do that? That annual Net Promoter Score survey. It's something that we do every single year with our customers, and truly it's one question. And you can, if you have 10 customers, you can ask them over lunch. But it's something that we typically, we use SurveyMonkey to do. It's, they even have a built-in widget on how you do it. And our account with SurveyMonkey's free. So, it's something you can do really easily. I handed out that customer health dashboard. Periodic customer planning and review meetings. We try to meet with all of our clients at least once a quarter to assess, how happy they are, how are we doing, what can we be doing to change, slightly change and maybe tweak the direction, and again, making sure that everything's on track. One-to-one meetings with key decision makers. Part of my role is I'm to meet with, the owners, the presidents, the leaders of all of our clients at least once a year, if not more frequently. So, having a meeting, even if those people are no longer responsible, and may not even have awareness of everything that's going on from a marketing standpoint, those are the people that are writing the checks. So whoever's writing that check and signing that check and paying you are the people that you need to make sure you're meeting with. The other thing, how many of you have advisory boards or have thought about an advisory board? Great. Well, what's been your experience with an advisory board?
Painful. No. Because they'll confront me on
thinking. So one of the things with an advisory board is you also want to surround it with people that could be potential customers or may be a customer. One, that's going to, probably help their satisfaction. It's going to be something that, is going to make them feel important, but also they'll be able to give you direct feedback on opportunities for improvement. And I mentioned earlier, quiet customers are the most dangerous. So, but as I hinted out, one, again, piece of homework I'd give as an exercise is, create your own customer health dashboard and do that for, and assess, as many of your clients as you possibly can. So any other questions about measuring customer health before we move on to rule number 5? Okay, well, I will move on. So rule number 5, honestly, it's pretty simple. It's how are you constantly going to be improving? And that's going to change for every single, organization, but it is a cyclical thing. I mean, it's not just, your product or your service is ever going to be fully done. And you're always going to be tweaking and improving and growing. So that's just, a key piece to be thinking about. And, one of those things is as you are getting ratings and reviews and information directly from your customers, that net promoter score and things like that, are you taking action based upon that feedback? I will tell you, if you're going to ask for feedback, then you have to act upon it. The most dangerous thing you can do is ask for feedback and then don't do anything with that feedback. So, building a plan. And again, it could be for each customer individually or customer groups, and then implementing that. Constant monitoring, adjusting, and refining. So again, having those quarterly meetings, those touch bases where you're constantly understanding, are there little tweaks that need to be made? Thinking strategically versus tactically. I know that's something that I will, say is always something that I struggle with. And the more to be added, honestly, kind of comes from you guys. I mean, it's all about, just constant tweaking and thinking, how can you guys improve? How can you improve that service, and what does that look like? And so things like the advisory boards, and again, just going to lunch and asking the client for feedback is a great way to do that. Any other thoughts on, how you guys maybe have looked at improving your customer service and those customer relationships? Yes, sir.
Excuse me.
Sure.
A lot of the things that you mentioned in 5 points, they're all good.
That's a really hard, business decision. And one of the things, as you may define, is that the ideal client is a client that's cost conscious. So how do you guys structure the company and all of your systems and services and processes where you're the best at delivering good service, at the quality and the price that client is willing to, provide? And I wish, that's a really hard question to answer that I think everybody's struggling with. It's one of the reasons why we don't go after a lot of public work anymore, because it's something that they typically will want the lowest price, and I don't think that that's going to give them the highest quality from a marketing standpoint. Yes, sir.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it'd be like in the auto industry when pricing got so phenomenally competitive. Okay, the automakers dropped their prices, but guess what happened to the hourly rate on the service?
Mm-hmm.
And so what the auto industry does is they have a commodity and a value-added model, and then what they focus on, if they do it right, is the value is in the service, so that people keep on coming back, because they're basically giving the cars away.
Yeah.
They're not.
No, that's a great point. Well, I know we have lots of time left because it's 12:19, and I know that they typically have booked this out to 1:30. But the last thing. So we went through the 5 points. The last thing, and again, we'll make sure that Tia gets this sent out, and I'll send a PDF of this to her. These are just some books that are really interesting. Some of them are service business oriented. The Trusted Advisor by David Maister, for any business that's like a Deloitte or it competes in that area. That's a phenomenal book, and and Getting Naked. It's a funny title, but it's a great book about how you can get naked with your customers and really make sure that you're focused on their needs. And then there's just some others that we've read and really liked these. But with that, this is kind of the end of the presentation, but be happy to answer additional questions as you guys have them.
When you're looking at new clients,
Mm-hmm.
Should there be a percentage like 70%, of your retention clients and maybe 30% new, or how should that be structured? Do you have any ideas on that?
That is a great question. I think it's got to be customized for each organization, but I'll just share for us. We have, as we're projecting, year over year growth, we're projecting that we're going to retain 70 to 80% of all of our clients, and then new business development is going to achieve 30% for a 10% growth. That story I kind of shared at the beginning, that if you can retain 90% of your customers and focus on 20% growth, again, that's a really positive thing. So I wish I could say there's a set answer. I think in the service business, it's, how do you retain, 80+% of your customers? I think more in the product-based, kind of consumer-driven industries, restaurants, as an example, they're looking to retain, 60%, and drive, a lot of new traffic as well. But it is, it's loyalty is really important. Yes.
Under the ways to engage, can you talk more about the loyalty program?
Sure. Well, and again, and so from a loyalty program standpoint, everybody's going to be different. So Cardinal Health, has very specific rebates and pricing on their loyalty program. So you purchase this amount, of product, and you're going to get this % discount on all future purchases. I will say for Marketing Works and our loyalty program, it really comes down to, a lot of things like birthday gifts and dinners and the appreciation event and it's really everything kind of, that's, all of those elements. And then the Net Promoter Score and kind of just, how are we building that? We don't have a specialty loyalty program for our clients because, again, I don't think we're probably big enough, and we haven't segmented our clients in a certain way. But if you have thousands of clients and there is a top tier of those that you really want to keep and grow and build, a loyalty program would make a lot of sense.
How do you go about avoiding, when you do this, how do you keep the face on the customer? Because I've had some Christmas cards and things like that, where everybody in the office is signing. I'm going, I bet none of these people know what my name is. They just had 500 cards to go through.
Yeah.
How do you maintain the personal touch? The genuineness, I guess that's what I'm looking for. When you show the appreciation, how do you maintain the genuineness?
Well, and again, I think a lot of that is, especially when you have a set number of customers and it's not in the hundreds and thousands, by truly taking an interest and understanding who they are and, reaching out to them on their birthday. I agree, getting a Christmas card from an attorney or a lawyer or, same thing, or my accountant, is what everybody in the office signs it is not the way that, I really want to be treated. But I will just say, the individual that happens to be my business attorney, also knows that I love golf. So, at least once a year, he's inviting me out to a course maybe I've never played before. So it's doing, I think, those personal things and staying in touch. I mean, really just staying engaged and in touch. And also knowing them. So by sending out that welcome survey, you may know things about that individual that maybe they love Ohio State. And even just sending a note before the first game, hey, go Bucks, hope you're going to get out to the game this weekend. If, by the way, you're out there, I may be at this tailgate, love to see you, or just something like that even.
It's helpful to be genuine as well, not just to act like it, because that's sometimes you run into people and you know that they're playing that, they're signing the card for the whole office, but you can tell, like, when you talk to somebody like Bill, like, he has genuine interest in your business, so it means something a little bit different. You get the whole bulk, like, I don't want any of these cards, they're not going up on the wall. But when you get the one from somebody you know that, like, oh, this guy puts thought into it, like, even if it is just signed, you know that person is a genuine person.
It's like sending out that letter that goes to everybody, but the personal note on the side, in an ink pen that you can tell that it has been handwritten, that makes the difference.
Yeah.
You said you had spoken to technology companies.
Mm-hmm.
What have they told you about, their customers and stuff like that? Can you share some information on that?
Sure. So, I mean, and again, we do a lot of work with technology companies and even technology consulting companies. And so I think, and again, it follows a lot of the same model that we've been talking about, but it really is how are they, assessing the needs of those customers and addressing them. And so, I just know, and I can give lots of examples, but Resource, and now it's Resource Ammirati, but Resource is a web design company locally that now is part of IBM. Well, they're now going out and having, some significant client appreciation events. They're even doing alumni events. So if you ever worked at Resource, they're now reaching back out because you could be a customer of theirs in the future. So doing things like that. There's a group up in Westerville, HMB, and HMB, it puts on a lot of events with their customers. They have specific plans for each customer about how they're reaching out, what they're reaching out with, and so they've been very, very specific about what it is that they're doing, and even in some cases that customer isn't able to accept gifts. So it's just building that relationship. Who's going to be reaching out at what time, are some of the things I know that they've been doing. And the other thing they've been doing is focusing on their community engagement. So they know that a lot of their larger clients are heavily involved in the community. So HMB is focusing a lot on their charitable work, being a best places to work, and making sure that they're taking care of their employees and they're recognized for that, because that's something that they learned was really important to their customers as well. And the same, the organization I was talking about from messaging, Axia. So again, and I don't know if you know Harry Kiefaber, so distant relative of mine, but Harry is probably the best person I've ever met at relationships. Everybody that knows Harry loves Harry because he's just a wonderful, genuine, great person. Harry does business based on a handshake. So, and that's something. So when it comes to customers, Harry's going out and, going to lunch with them. He's inviting them to NASCAR races, up in Michigan. He's doing a lot of things based upon his knowledge, of those customers. So he's just, again, he's been honestly a great mentor and, role model for me to follow on building those types of relationships. Axia also, though, has, a lot of, they call them fan events. So Friends of Axia events. And if you've been to those, yes, and I have too. But so that's another way of that they're building those relationships. So every quarter in every market that they serve, whether it's Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Columbus, their top leaders are there.
I think one thing that Harry does, better than anybody I've seen is when he pulls people together, he doesn't see people as competition. There's enough business for everybody to go around, and he tries to enhance that.
Yep.
So when you go to his gatherings at his favorite water hole or whatever, he's there to make sure that people are introduced to one another, and he says we need to grow together.
Yeah.
Harry is just he's been a mentor too.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah. So it's, think about that. It's the connections. I will just, again, and to cite personal examples because it's what I'm most familiar with, but at Marketing Works, when we defined our purpose as a business, we defined our purpose to be, we're going to be a conduit to success for everyone we touch. Well, there are a lot of people that we touch that are not potential customers. I was at dinner last night with somebody that honestly is looking for a job. And so I was there to help make connections for her. And ultimately, that will pay off down the road. So it's, as you said, it's, how can you build upon those connections and, get known for that as well?
I think that was technology companies too. I know that they've made a name for themselves by becoming a landing pad for executives, but then go someplace else. They want to be a great place to work for a while, but then they know that they're going to get hired by Ohio State or they're going to get hired by one of these companies. And then when those bids come out, somehow they manage to find their way to the top. More than you would expect.
Any other questions? Well, I really appreciate, everybody's, great energy and questions, and please, again, I will, I have business cards if you'd be interested, and I'd be happy to grab coffee or go to one of Harry's favorite watering holes. Yeah. So, but thank you guys. I really appreciate this. Thank you so much.